Rakeyan Sunu was born into the distinguished royal lineage of the Sunda Kingdom during the height of its cultural and political synthesis. His birth took place in the 10th century CE, a time marked by relative stability and growing spiritual influence across Western Java. He was born in the capital city of the Sunda heartland, where both Hindu and Buddhist principles were interwoven into court life. As a royal heir, his arrival was celebrated with sacred rituals, fire offerings, and the bestowal of ancestral blessings by Brahmin priests and royal shamans alike. The name Rakeyan Sunu carries deep meaning in Old Sundanese and Sanskrit-derived terminology. Rakeyan is a title used to denote royal bloodlines, particularly those considered young lords or princes with sacred responsibilities. The word Sunu is often interpreted as noble one, son of virtue, or the wise-born, pointing toward his perceived destiny to be a contemplative and fair leader. His father, Rakeyan Sunu, was a revered king in his own right and was remembered for uniting key Sundanese territories through alliances rather than war. His mother was a noble consort from a southern principality near the Priangan highlands, believed to be well-versed in the arts and healing. Through this union, Rakeyan Sunu was imbued with both political legitimacy and spiritual lineage, making him a prime candidate for eventual leadership. His maternal ancestors were custodians of regional wisdom traditions and temple guardians, which shaped Rakeyan Sunu's balanced worldview between earthly governance and divine purpose. As a young prince, Rakeyan Sunu was mentored by a blend of scholars, monks, and seasoned warriors. His education took place not only within the palace walls, but also in mountain hermitages and riverside monasteries. He mastered ancient scripts, sacred epics, statecraft, and diplomacy while also being trained in silat, traditional martial arts, horse riding, and archery. Unlike more ambitious noblemen, Sunu remained humble and introspective. This aura of quiet strength gained him both the admiration of the people and the trust of elder courtiers. Chronicles describe Rakeyan Sunu as deeply respectful, fair-minded, and quietly resolute. He was said to have a special connection to nature, often retreating to forests or waterfalls to meditate. It was this early devotion to spiritual practice and his refusal to indulge in courtly extravagance that began to distinguish him from his peers. At the time, elders in the kingdom began to whisper that he bore the signs of a Dharma Raja, a king whose rule would be aligned with cosmic order and righteousness. Rakeyan Sunu's rise to the throne was peaceful, a rarity in many monarchic successions. His father, Rakeyan Sunu, had long seen in him a worthy successor and ensured a smooth transition by securing noble support and blessing Sunu's name through ritual ceremonies months before abdication. Unlike others who seized power, Sunu's ascension was accompanied by hymns, temple bells, and widespread joy across the Sunda realm. He was crowned in Pakuan Pajajaran, beneath the towering shade of sacred tarum trees, symbolic of the harmony he vowed to uphold. His early reign was marked by strategic continuity. Rather than overturning his father's policies, Rakeyan Sunu carefully studied their impacts and modified only where necessary. He strengthened local administrative councils, empowering regional nobles to resolve disputes while ensuring their loyalty through a system of symbolic gifts and ritualized oaths. He also placed emphasis on justice, often personally hearing appeals from villagers and commoners, a rare act for a king, earning him the title Pangayoman Rakyat, or protector of the people. In religious affairs, Rakeyan Sunu promoted syncretism between the Sunda native faiths, Hinduism and Mahayana Buddhism. He supported the building and restoration of temples, shrines, and meditation pavilions throughout the land. These included mountaintop hermitages for yogis and forest ashrams for sages who offered counsel to the king. His court became a hub for spiritual learning, where sages, poets, and monks from neighboring islands were welcome to debate philosophy and law. Economically, the kingdom prospered under Sunu's reforms. He reinvigorated trade routes, especially the ones linking inland rice-producing valleys to coastal markets. Ports like Sunda Kelapa, present-day Jakarta, and Simanuk flourished under his indirect influence, benefiting from decreased tariffs and increased merchant protection. Sunu also introduced tax reforms that alleviated burdens on peasant farmers while demanding greater efficiency from land-owning elites. During this phase of his reign, Rakeyan Sunu was admired for his calm but firm leadership. He traveled extensively across his domain, not merely to assert his presence but to listen and observe. He preferred staying in modest wooden lodges near village fields or forest clearings instead of lavish palaces. These visits solidified his image as a king who ruled not from above, but alongside his people. earning undying loyalty that would define the golden years of his reign. As Rakeyan Sunu's reign matured, challenges began to arise from both internal and external fronts. The rise of maritime rival kingdoms to the north, particularly those with ties to foreign traders from India and China, placed pressure on Sunda's coastal autonomy. Sunu responded not with war, but with diplomacy, sending emissaries bearing tribute and gifts to neighboring rulers, forging strategic alliances through marriage and commerce. Internally, his emphasis on spiritual harmony sometimes clashed with court factions that prioritized military expansion and regional dominance. Some nobles viewed Sunu's temperance as weakness, pushing for conquest of border regions, rather than suppressing these dissenters with brute force. Sunu created a council of elders and warriors to bring grievances to open dialogue, thus disarming political tension through consensus and spiritual framing. A pivotal episode of his rule occurred during a prolonged drought and crop failure. Faced with famine, Rakeyan Sunu ordered the royal grain reserves open to the people. Temples and palace warehouses became centers for food distribution, guided by the principle of Rahayu or universal well-being. This move not only saved countless lives, but also deepened the people's trust in him as a ruler of compassion and sacrifice. It was during this period that Rakeyan Sunu is said to have achieved higher states of meditative insight. He spent long nights in the sacred forests of Gunung Salak and Mount Galunggung, reportedly fasting and engaging in mantra meditation. Elders later claimed he gained madabatan, inner vision, and could perceive omens in dreams and nature. His wisdom became legend, and stories began to circulate of him predicting floods, diseases, and even calming wild animals with mere words. Through these challenges, Sunu evolved from a wise young king to a sage-like monarch whose leadership extended beyond politics. His governance became less about decree and more about example. His court became a spiritual center as much as a political one, where rites were performed to balance cosmic forces and where justice was delivered with spiritual consideration. Rakeyan Sunu began to contemplate the nature of mortality and the future of his kingdom. He believed that a king should step down not in weakness but in wisdom, before age dulled the mind or desire for control corrupted the soul. He began preparing a successor among his children and nephews, and regional governors to the royal court, and declared his intention to abdicate peacefully. As his long reign had built a reservoir of goodwill, he undertook a final pilgrimage across the kingdom, visiting key sites, performing sacred offerings, and giving farewell teachings to local leaders and spiritual devotees. A youth of both political acumen and spiritual depth. Meditative practices, Sunu removed the sacred diadem and handed over the kriss of kingship. It was a symbolic act marking the end of his worldly duty. Rakeyan Sunu withdrew to a hermitage near Mount Tangkuban Parahu. He adopted the lifestyle of a rishi, seer, who regarded him as a living saint. But his written maxims and meditative poems spread across the land and influenced generations of Sundanese thinkers. He wrote the Sarat Pangwisikan, Cosmological Insights. By stepping back from power with grace and leaving behind a trove of spiritual wisdom, as the years passed, Rakeyan Sunu's mystique only grew. Though he had renounced royal duties, the people believed that he had become more powerful in his spiritual seclusion. Tales began to circulate of his supernatural abilities. Some claimed that he could summon rain by chanting beneath banyan trees. Others insisted he could heal the sick simply by touch. He was often described as having the ability to communicate with unseen spirits of the forest and ancestors, guiding wayfarers and mystics through dreams and visions. Among the most famed aspects of his legend was the possession of sacred heirlooms. Foremost among these was the Kujang Giriwat, a mythical blade said to have been forged by celestial blacksmiths. The blade bore inscriptions in ancient Sundanese characters and was believed to respond to its owner's intentions, glowing faintly in times of danger or when spiritual purity was achieved. Another heirloom was the Kalasa Sari Bumi, a ceremonial urn said to hold the ashes of his great-grandfather and used in rituals to ensure fertility of the land. He was also reputed to wear a selendang kawang, a sash patterned with the sacred kawang motif, symbolizing balance and divine order. It was believed that while wearing the sash, Rakeyan Sunu could walk through fire unharmed or remain untouched by blades. Even after his departure from court, emissaries and nobles would visit him seeking blessings, touching the hem of his garment for protection during battle or difficult journeys. His association with supernatural events was not limited to relics alone. During an attempted coastal raid by pirates from the northern seas, it was said that Sunu appeared in the dream of the commander at Sunda Kingdom, warning him of the attack and instructing precise defensive maneuvers. The warning saved the port from plunder, and news of the miracle spread, reinforcing the belief that Sunu had transcended the earthly role of king and become a Batara Raja, a king elevated to semi-divine status. Though Rakeyan Sunu never encouraged the worship of himself, shrines and meditation groves began to be established around places he visited. These sanctuaries bore his teachings carved into wooden pillars and offered incense and prayers in his name. His sacred heirlooms were believed to be dispersed among the royal lineage, and some were even said to be hidden, waiting to reveal themselves when the kingdom faced its greatest peril. Rakeyan Sunu passed away in profound silence during a full moon night atop a meditation platform at his forest hermitage. It is said that moments before his passing, a great white eagle circled the mountain thrice, and the air became perfumed with the scent of blooming sandalwood, unusual for the season. His disciples found him seated in the lotus position, eyes closed, face serene, as if slipping into an eternal meditation rather than death. His body was not cremated in the usual royal fashion, but was interred in a secret site deep within the forest, according to his last wish. Legend suggests that the location is somewhere on the southern slope of Mount Tangkuban Parahu, marked only by a single tarum tree that never withers. Over time, the site came to be known as Gunung Sunu, a sacred pilgrimage destination where seekers go to meditate, seek wisdom, or offer prayers during the harvest season. In the modern age, the geographic traces of Rakeyan Sunu's influence remain profound. Several villages across West Java bear names associated with his teachings or journeys: Sunanunggal, Sukasari, and Lingasunu, to name a few. These places maintain traditions attributed to his era, such as Mapag Sri ceremonies for fertility and Gabektan rituals for royal remembrance. His philosophical writings, particularly the Sarat Panguisikan, are referenced in Sundanese cultural and ethical education to this day. Schools and cultural centers include his teachings and curricula, emphasizing his values of humility, harmony with nature, and balanced governance. His image is also found in modern wayang golek puppet performances, where he is portrayed as the wise sage king whose decisions alter the fate of kingdoms. Even urban spaces pay homage to his name. Streets and parks in Bandung and Garut bear the name Rakeyan Sunu, and statues commemorating his wisdom have been erected near traditional courts and cultural museums. The region he once ruled remembers him not only as a historical king, but as a cultural ancestor, an ideal ruler whose legacy bridges the mystical and the moral, the ancient and the eternal.